And for everybody, Tom Love is with the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. So we're glad to have him here today to talk to us about the water supply. So thank you, Tom, for participating today, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And I just need to adjust where my screen is. Just give me a moment here. All right, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. My name's Tom Love. I'm General Manager with the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. And I do want to share with you, I'm approaching 40 years in water resource management in the Western United States. And what we're seeing right now is a pattern that historically we have seen, but lately it seems to be more extreme and more lengthy than it has been in the past. So I recall when I started my career in 1983, it was an exceptionally wet year. I was working for a water district in Utah, and that was the year that they turned State Street in Salt Lake City into a river because of the flooding. Again, in 1986, I was doing flood control operations again in Utah, and we had February warm storm that resulted in runoff, not unlike we saw at Oroville here in California in 2017. But in between those years, were just dry years, and that's the climate we live in here in Southern California. We refer to it as a Mediterranean climate, so think of Southern Italy, Greece, where it's very dry in the summer. We hardly ever get rainfall during the summer months, and we do get rain generally from October through the end of April, sometimes into May, with the rainiest months being January and February. And so as we watch every year, we don't know what's coming the following year. And so we always need to think ahead and realize next year could be another dry year. So what do we need to do today? So I'll move into a little bit onto Upper District. So Upper District was formed in 1960 by a vote of the people, the residents of the San Gabriel Valley. We encompass 19 cities, excuse me, and we have 26 water retailers. The City of Monrovia Water Department is one of those. We are governed by a 5-member board elected by the voters. The representative for Monrovia is Dr. Tony Fellow. He is our longest serving board member in history, approaching his 30th year on our board. And as an excellent board member, he asks me the tough questions. He's always looking forward. And we want to make sure that he always wants to make sure we're prepared for the future. We are a member of the Metropolitan Water District, and that frankly is the reason we were formed. So as the region, the San Gabriel Valley developed, water demands increased, groundwater pumping increased to the point where it was no longer sustainable from local rainfall and runoff. And so they realized they needed to find a way to get access to a supplemental water supply. And at the time, that imported water supply was Metropolitan Water District, who had constructed the Colorado River Aqueduct in the 1930s. And so in the 1960s, Upper District was formed, and we became a member of the Metropolitan Water District and have been receiving supplemental water deliveries from Metropolitan to supplement our local supplies ever since. Subsequent to that, during the 1960s, the state of California built the State Water Project to bring water through the California Aqueduct from Northern California to Southern California. I was about to say next slide, but I'm in control, so I'll move forward. So I kind of talked about where our water comes from, and we are fortunate here in the San Gabriel Valley that 80% of our water supply today comes from local water. So the picture to the right shows Morris Dam. It's up San Gabriel Canyon, and the county flood control has 3 dams: Morris Dam, Cogswell Dam, and San Gabriel Dam. And so when we do get rain in the winter, they hold that water back behind those 3 dams and then release it at a flow rate that they are able to move into what's called the Santa Fe spreading grounds. And if you drive along the 605 at the 210, 605 interchange, and sometimes in the spring, if you look out, you will see ponds of water in large basins. Those are the Santa Fe spreading grounds. And the water is placed in those basins and allowed to percolate through the soil down to the aquifer to meet our groundwater supply needs. And we also bring in imported water to replenish the groundwater basin as well. So in that picture to the right, And if you look at the lower right-hand corner, you see some water coming into the river channel. That is actually imported water being delivered from Northern California to the San Gabriel River, and it flows down the river to those Santa Fe spreading grounds to help meet our water supply needs. And then the two sources of supply I talked about that are imported is the State Water Project from Northern California and the Colorado River Aqueduct. We typically do not put Colorado River water into the groundwater basin. The Colorado River water goes through the metropolitan treatment plants. And for those of our customers that do receive treated water, today it is actually 100% Colorado River water, but it can be a blend of State Water Project and Colorado River water. The other thing, I'm sorry, as I'm moving my mouse and I've got 3 screens open. So the other thing I wanted to mention about the 80%, that is the long-term average amount of supply we get from local water. But over the last 20 years, our rainfall is running at about 20% below our long-term historical average. So that local water supply of 80% has declined to a little less than 75%. And what that means is we need to bring in a little bit more imported water to meet that need. So I want to talk about this current year and the exceptional dry year we are seeing in the Western United States, not only here in Southern California, throughout the state of California and the entire Western United States. And there's some interesting things that are happening in the last few years that for my colleagues like me who've been in this business a long time, we're seeing some patterns that we've never seen before. And we suspect they are due to, at some extent, due to climate change. And so if you look at the Colorado River supply, this is the entire Colorado River watershed, which goes all the way up into Wyoming and northern Colorado. So this year they had about 88% of normal snowpack. So that's not great, but it's not too bad. But the concern is the actual runoff from an 88% snowpack has only been 32% of normal. And that's quite concerning. And so the reasons for that are that the winters tend to end early. So up in the upper elevations where normally the snow stays around until May, that snow is melting, the temperatures are rising, and the vegetation starts growing much earlier in the year. And vegetation, of course, it needs water, so it brings water up through its roots into its leaves, and then that water is lost to the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. In addition, because of sequential dry years, the soil is extremely dry as well. And it's just like a sponge. So when we do get some runoff or rainfall or precipitation, the soil is absorbing that water and, if you will, re-wetting itself like a sponge. And we are seeing similar patterns on the watersheds that supply the State Water Project that you can see in the second part of that, the second series of bullets. Locally here in the San Gabriel Valley, we've received about 6.4 inches of rain during this water year, and that's only 35% of normal. Very, very dry. So from a water supply and this year's precipitation, we are in an exceptional drought condition. So the map that shows California, the darker shaded areas are called an exceptional drought. That's the highest level of drought that they depict here. And then you see the map of the United States, and you can see that applies to the entire Western United States, including up into the Northwest. So given that situation, Governor Newsom has made some declarations. In April, he designated 2 counties as drought emergencies, or I should say drought emergencies in 2 counties. He added 41 counties in May, and in July added 50 out of the 55 counties in the state under his emergency drought declaration. The only counties that are left out are San Francisco and almost all of Southern California. And I'll explain why that is. Why are we left out in a moment? But he has called for the entire state, including Southern California, to move towards a voluntary 15% water use reduction. And so while 15% may not sound like a lot, if you recall, in 2014, Governor Brown did an emergency drought declaration and called for a mandatory 25% conservation, which in large part was achieved. Certainly here in the San Gabriel Valley, we achieved 25% conservation during that last drought. But what has happened is we have not rebounded to our pre-2014 water use. We are still seeing water use running about 20 to 25% less than it was prior to 2014. So the 15% is in addition to that 25% savings we've already achieved. So I don't want to be all bad news, and I do want to share some supposedly good news. And this is thanks to our communities, our ratepayers, and the investments that have been made, frankly, over decades. So in Metropolitan's service area over the last 30 years, they have increased their capacity to store water by tenfold. It's a huge increase in their ability to store water. And that's come through an investment, several investments, in fact, both here in the service area with the construction of one of the largest surface water reservoirs in Southern California, the Diamond Valley Lake out by Hemet. And then also through storage programs in the Central Valley, groundwater banking, as well as agreements on the Colorado River that allows Metropolitan to store their own water in behind Lake Mead. And so the chart to the left shows you the historic amount of water Metropolitan has had in storage at the end of those calendar years. And I want to take you back to prior to that last historic drought. In 2012, Metropolitan had 2.7 million acre feet of water in storage. That was the highest amount of water they've ever had in their 90-year history. And you can see what happened during the drought. That storage did what it was intended to. It provided a supplemental water supply when we had those exceptionally dry years, and that storage was drawn down up until 2015. 2016 was a little better year from a rainfall and snowpack perspective, so they gained a little bit. And then 2017 was another exceptionally wet year, which we do get periodically in the Western United States. In fact, 2017 was the wettest year on record in Northern California. And that was the year they had the challenge of the spillway damage at Oroville. So they did come back up, and they continued to put water in storage for the last few years. And at the end of last year, at the end of 2020, Metropolitan set a new record for the amount of water they had in storage at 3.2 million acre feet. But because it's so dry on the Colorado River and on the State Water Project, and because it's so dry here, actually water demands are creeping up a little bit. And so they're anticipating having to draw about 700,000 acre feet from their storage reserves. But that still leaves us with 2.5 million acre feet, but we do not know how long this dry period will last. It could be another year, it could be another few more years. So we want to remain prepared for that. And I'll talk a little bit later. Part of the challenge we do have, in spite of this amount of water in storage, is a good chunk of that water is on the Colorado River. But Metropolitan cannot move Colorado River water to their entire service area. There are areas that do historically only use State Water Project. And so they have many activities and some capital improvements ongoing to be able to move more of that Colorado River water throughout a greater part of their system. And then the chart to the right is our local storage. These are the canyon reservoirs I mentioned earlier, up San Gabriel Canyon. You can see 04-05 was our wettest year here in the San Gabriel Valley in over 100 years. And we really filled up that storage, and the basin responded very well during that year. But other than that year, maybe 2010, 11, and then a little bit in 2017, we've been pretty much dry for the last 20 years. But that storage has not gone unused. I do want to say that here in the San Gabriel Valley, most people don't know this, is under normal rainfall years, unless we get an exceptionally wet year, 100% of the rain that falls, rain and snow that falls in the upper San Gabriel River watershed never makes it to the ocean. It is all captured and stored in the groundwater basin. Most of it here in the San Gabriel Valley, some of it south of Whittier Narrows in what's called the Central Basin. But the county does an exceptional job of capturing stormwater here in the San Gabriel Valley. So this chart is, so now I'm going to talk about the groundwater basin. So what's called the main San Gabriel Basin. And that's where most of that 80% of our water supply comes from pumping out of the basin. And it's a vast reservoir that if we were to take it all the way down to bedrock is about 7 million acre feet. But if we did that, anyone who is not at the center of the basin, their wells would go dry. So obviously we don't operate all the way down to that level. The range of storage we have in the basin that we can effectively utilize is about 1 million acre feet, about 800,000 acre feet. And so we try and operate within, on this chart, it shows that target range. So the groundwater level between 200 feet above sea level up to 250 feet above sea level. And so this takes you way back in history to, as we ended World War II and the area began to grow, water demands increased. And we did not have supplemental water coming into the valley at that time. And you can see what we call the key well, this is the elevation in the basin, was declining at a pretty steady rate until about 1970. So the water managers at that time knew they had a problem prior to 1970, and so they were already working on some solutions. One of those was the formation of the San Gabriel Valley or Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District in the 60s to bring in supplemental water. But in the 1970s, all the entities and well owners entered into what's called a stipulated judgment. And it was the third basin in groundwater basin in California that was adjudicated. In other words, they all went to court, although they all agreed, they did want the court to approve this stipulated judgment that sets out the rules and accounting for how to manage a sustainable groundwater basin. And you can see that trend line, what happened after that judgment and the basin became managed in a sustainable manner. The groundwater levels, they go up and down, of course, but the trend line was pretty steady and flat until about the last 10 years. And because locally our rainfall has been so much below the long-term average, the basin was drawn down and it hit a historic low in November of 2017. And as I mentioned, 2017 was a wet year. We got some water back in the basin, but also some new measures have been put into place to create a funding mechanism in order to purchase even more imported water when it is available during those wet years. And that trend line has bounced back up. It's not where we'd like it to be, but it's moving in the right direction. So with the challenges we have on the imported water supplies, the Colorado Basin being so exceptionally dry, earlier this week, the Bureau of Reclamation, who manages the entire Colorado River Basin and all of the water rights holders, the 7 basin states who draw water out of the Colorado River system, declared for the first time in history a shortage on the Colorado River system. Now that first level of shortage, which they just declared, does not impact California. California's water rights on the river have a higher priority than some of the other states, but it will impact Nevada and Arizona. They will have to curtail and reduce the amount of water they pull off the Colorado River. If this trend continues, they could reach the second shortage level, which if it remains dry, that might occur within 2 years. And then California will have to take a small haircut on the amount of water supply they get from the Colorado River. So what are we going to do about that? Those are supplies that the State Water Project has some challenges. There is work going on what's called the Delta Conveyance Facility. Formerly, you might have known it as the Peripheral Canal, to enable a greater quantity of water to be moved into the system during those wet years. But what else are we going to do about it? I already mentioned we're capturing all of our stormwater here in the San Gabriel Valley. There might be small amounts of additional stormwater we could capture. But we are embarking collectively, when I say we, on a regional recycled water project. So we already are using recycled water here in the San Gabriel Valley off of the LA County Sanitation District treatment plants near Whittier Narrows Dam. So essentially, we're using all of the available recycled water that comes out of those plants already. So in order to get additional recycled water, we have to go farther downstream, and that's to the County Sanitation District plant in the city of Carson. They call it the Joint Outfall Plant. And And Metropolitan is embarking on a project that will build a advanced treatment plant to provide the highest level of treatment and create about 150 million gallons per day. That's enough water for 500,000 homes at that treatment plant, and move that water through a system into Orange County, into the South Bay area, and a pipeline that will come all the way up along the 605 freeway or San Gabriel River and deliver enough water to the San Gabriel Valley to essentially eliminate our dependence on imported water. The project is still about 10 years away from completion. The cost is about $3 to $4 billion. And recently, Congresswoman Napolitano has been instrumental in getting some funding mechanisms through Congress that will help support the cost of that project with some federal grant programs. The other one, and I mentioned this before, is the continuation of the Delta Conveyance Project to improve the reliability and water supply coming off of the State Water Project. So now I want to talk about conservation, and I mentioned this before. This is a longer term trend of the amount of water use in the San Gabriel Valley. And you can see it's been significant, a 25% reduction in our per capita water use and total water use here in the San Gabriel Valley, which is really phenomenal. And we want to express our appreciation to the communities who've stepped up to do this. That really reduces our dependence on that less reliable imported water. But the governor's asked for a little bit more, and we're also asking for a little bit more. In fact, next week, the Upper District Board of Directors will be considering adoption of a water supply alert. Earlier this week, the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors did increase the level of their water supply alert and reiterated that call, the governor's call for 15% conservation. But we know that's not something we're asking everyone to do on their own. We do have some incentives and some information that could help our residents conserve even more water. And I want to share some of those with you today. So we do have a new, we call it our Water Smart Home program. And this is really targeting more of the disadvantaged communities. So I think many of you are aware, we've given out low flow toilets. We do the shower heads. We've done turf rebates for outdoor irrigation. We provide smart irrigation controllers. But in some of the lower income areas, what we're finding is those devices have not been installed. And so this is a program that we actually rolled out about 1.5 years ago, but it was difficult to implement because of the COVID restrictions. It was difficult to send an installer into a home to install a toilet because no people did not want strangers coming into their home. But it's opening up now, and so we're moving forward with this program to help people who haven't been able to install low flow devices in their homes to get those devices installed. We've got a lot of WaterSmart videos available. They're available on our website. They're both in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Smart gardening, information about the quality of your tap water. We do have a new water bottle fill station program. We're installing those refillable water bottles. And you might ask, well, how is that conserving water? Well, the amount of water required to fill a bottled water bottle, whether it's Arrowhead or whatever, takes about 10 times more water than is in the bottle to make the bottle, to fill the bottle, and transport the bottle. And so using your tap water is a way to conserve water rather than buying bottled water. And you'll save money too. And there's other rebates and incentives available through the Metropolitan Water District website, Be Water Wise. And we also have residential landscape classes to show you how to do a more water or drought tolerant landscape in your yard. In terms of education, now that there are some community events going on, we are trying to get our staff out to these events, providing water conservation tips and devices, and also some kids activities, educating our youth on water conservation. So our outreach, we've kind of changed our outreach, and certainly over the last year, we've changed our classes. We've put up a lot more online classes as opposed to in-person classes. And that's been very effective. We've actually been able to reach quite a few more people by doing those classes online. And then we did a firescaping webinar with a guest speaker talking about what can you do in your yards. And so for the residents living in Monrovia or along the foothills, what can we do in our backyards with our landscaping that can help protect your home from wildfires? If you put in the wrong kind of landscaping, it just becomes fuel for a fire. So I believe this webinar is still available online. I believe it's under our website, upperdistrict.org/watershed restoration. And if you don't find that there, let us know, and we'll make sure we can track that down. So when we're talking about the wildfires, one of our concerns is that watershed where the Bobcat fire burned is where we get our local water supply. And so we want to be very careful about how we manage that watershed. And given the magnitude of the Bobcat fire, it's become a much more monumental effort than it has in the past. For the last 30 years, Upper District has sponsored a watershed restoration program. We get groups of volunteers up on the weekends to plant trees, to clean up trash. But what we have now is a bigger area that we're going to have to work with some of the federal agencies to really get that watershed restoration moving forward. But at the same time, we want to educate our youth so they understand the importance of maintaining a healthy watershed, because a healthy watershed will preserve more water. And we want to be able to continue that effort. The other thing for our schools is we annually have a water education grant program where a school teacher, this is typically in elementary or most of it's middle school, usually science education, where they will come to us with a proposal. They'll fill out an application saying, hey, I would like to do X, Y, Z at my school. I would like to go outside the school and I would like to build a sustainable garden. And we will provide up to $1,000 per teacher, I should say, for those kinds of projects. And this last year we awarded 22 of those, and right now we're just opening up the application process for next year. And I don't know how long I went. I think it was about the right amount of time, but I covered a lot of material. If I could, I'd probably talk a couple of hours about this information, but I've got plenty of time for any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Tom. Great presentation. I'll open it up in the chat, or if anybody wants to unmute, if you have a question for Tom Love regarding this presentation. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions. Such a great presentation. You answered all their questions. So thank you, Tom. I appreciate your time. This is a great presentation so that we have a better understanding here locally of the watershed and water conservation and everything that's going on. And those are great programs. I think it's to share with our schools for the grants and all the other things that you do for outreach. It's phenomenal. So appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tom. Well, since we don't have any questions, I'll go ahead and move it over to our Public Works presentation with Chris. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and get that ready for Chris. Okay, Chris, you ready?
Yes.
It's all yours.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Justin. Really do appreciate the opportunity to chat here today. So as Justin mentioned, I'm a member of the City of Monrovia's Public Works Department. I get to help out with a number of different environmental and water issues and programs, one of them being our Monrovia Conserves program. So if you want to flip to the next slide. So as Justin mentioned, and Mr. Love really went into great depth of detail, the City of Monrovia has been really trying to do a number of different things with regards to water conservation in order to address the health of the main San Gabriel Basin over the past decade, really. And so what we find is that, well, as we think about it, the main San Gabriel Basin has been in a drought stage really for the past decade. Since 2015, in fact, the City of Monrovia has been in what we consider phase 1 of our water conservation plan. Really what that is a request for all of our residents to reduce water consumption by 10% from what we would consider standard usage. As Mr. Love mentioned, we found that folks have been going above and beyond. And we really do request that everybody continue to conserve. It's so necessary right now in order to ensure a healthy basin and make sure that our aquifer is regularly getting additional water coming in and resupplying us on every year. So if you want to flip that slide again. So part of what we do in order to ensure that 10% conservation, we provide some guidance to residents in terms of how they can conserve water. One of those would be outdoor watering. It really is one of the key portions of our water use. What we find is that the irrigation of your home garden, home lawn, it takes up over half of any one household's water use. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70% of your water use, in fact. So if you can find a way to keep your watering to about once per week, we recommend about once every 4 days. It's going to be incredibly helpful in terms of ensuring that we all meet our 10% consumption reduction. In addition, strongly encourage folks to water for about max of 15 minutes per landscaped area. What we find is that more than 15 minutes of watering really is going to probably overhydrate plants and or lead to some runoff, which of course is going to be just nothing but wasted water. It's going to increase your water bill. It's also going to unfortunately impact all of us in the long run. In addition, as I just mentioned a moment ago, anytime we're seeing any water running off from landscaped areas onto streets, sidewalks, and paved areas, it's really considered excessive watering. It's considered water waste. And so we would strongly encourage folks to limit the amount of runoff that you're going to see. Do what you can to recalibrate your sprinkler heads, make sure that we're limiting runoff as much as possible. We'd also strongly encourage folks to irrigate, not irrigate within 48 hours of any rainfall or high winds. What we see is that anytime that rain event occurs, you're going to already have more than enough hydration taking place for your lawn and garden. And so it really ends up being additional water if you were to irrigate at that time that's going to damage potentially some more sensitive plants and unfortunately go to waste to some extent. There's a number of other items as well, as you can see on the screen, but if we flip over to the next slide, I think we've got some additional helpful tips. So the city has a water conservation program that we call Monrovia Conserves that consists of 3 elements. First, educating the community on sustainable water conservation practices. Secondly, proactive demonstrating how to conserve water through various demonstration gardens and programs. And finally, celebrating the conservation efforts that we're seeing throughout the community. It really helps to inspire others to conserve when you see your neighbors going in, beautifying their home landscape at the same time they're conserving water. So if you want to flip the slide, we provide conservation tips and information at a number of different opportunities. Firstly, I hope that everybody is signed up for our city manager's weekly update. It provides some great information as far as programs happening throughout the community. And we try and make a regular appearance with various conservation tips therein. There's also the Monrovia Today quarterly magazine. We're regularly providing tips and infographics to help folks understand how better to conserve water use both in and outside the home. We love to show up to MAP events and really appreciate the opportunities that Alex and Justin provide us on a regular basis to talk about conservation. We really appreciate all of the partnerships we have with Upper District and all the virtual events that they've been providing throughout the course of the COVID pandemic. I strongly encourage everybody to take a look at bewaterwise.com. It's a great website provided by Upper District and Met with a bunch of different tips, and we're going to be hitting upon it throughout today's presentation. And then finally, our City of Monrovia social media feeds, both Facebook and Twitter, we're regularly providing tips and information about the current drought, as well as water conservation information. If we want to flip the slide. So I myself, I'm a new homeowner. I'm loving having a nice garden and lawn to be able to take care of. And one of the things that I found out recently in going and taking a look through some of our water conservation information and posting some of it to our website was that there's actually a recommended height that you should be keeping your grass. Now, I'm sure everybody knows that you don't want your grass to be too long, but in fact, you don't want your grass to be too short either. If you have grass that is shorter than 2 inches in length, what you're going to find is that that soil that that grass is planted in does not retain proper moisture. In fact, it's going to what you're going to see is it's going to reduce the health of the soil over the long term. So you keep your grass height at 2 inches. It's going to help to retain that moisture and keep a nice lush grass lawn for years to come. Now, at the same time, there are a number of other tips that we provide and these sorts of information graphics. If we want to flip the slide, we'll be able to take a look at another one. One of the things that we're often hitting upon is ways in which you can reduce water consumption both inside the home and outside the home. Things such as washing fruits and vegetables in a pan of water rather than running the tap, turning off the tap while brushing your teeth instead of letting that water run. Those are all things that a lot of us have heard about in the past. One of the things that we're regularly stressing is the need to repair hoses and fittings. Small leaks, they really can add up and waste a large amount of water when you think about it over the course of the entire community and the entire San Gabriel Valley. What you found is that by replacing a fitting or hose nozzle, you're saving as much as 260 gallons of water a month from a small leak. That's going to add up not just for your water bill, but also obviously for our community as a whole to be wasting that sort of water. So we strongly encourage folks to take a look at those hoses and fittings. It's going to be really helpful for all of us as we try and get through this drought. If we want to flip the slide. So as we all know, City of Monrovia is really well known for our trees. We're a tree city USA, and we're very proud of it. And one of the things that we regularly hear in our Public Works Department is how can we keep Monrovia beautiful, keep those trees alive, and conserve water? Well, a great little project to take any one weekend that you have coming up is to create a deep watering system for your tree. So it's pretty simple. In fact, you would just take about 2 to 3 feet of 3-inch PVC pipe. You're going to take it and drill holes about ½ an inch in diameter. And you're going to drill those about 1 to 2 inches apart across the length of that PVC pipe. You're then going to dig out some holes around your tree. And if you place them between about halfway between the trunk and the edge of the tree canopy, you're going to get them in a perfect spot. So that way you're helping to irrigate the entire root ball. That root ball is basically the root system for the tree. And the reason why this is a great thing to do in order to ensure the health of your tree is because what you find is that by irrigating the surface of your lawn, all those roots are going to be over at the top of the lawn. And if instead what you're doing is watering deep under the lawn, then in fact, you're going to help ensure that all of those roots start to grow down. Downwards means that those roots are going to be able to get more moisture, more nutrients, and also more safety for you, your family, and your property. Because the deeper the roots of the tree, as you can imagine, the safer the tree, the longer it's going to last, the healthier it's going to be, and the better it's going to be able to survive things such as disease, windstorms, things like that. So we strongly encourage folks that have trees in their front or backyards to consider the potential for installing one of these deep watering systems. Again, it's not a very costly project, and it can be a fun little thing to take advantage of one weekend that you have free coming up. If you want to flip the slide, Justin. So beyond that, there's a number of different educational opportunities we have coming up. The City of Monrovia is so happy to be able to partner with Upper District and the Metropolitan Water District to provide these virtual classes. They're free. Registration is required, and they take on a number of different topics. You can learn about the benefits of native California plants, how they can be both environmentally friendly, and also they can help us to reduce our water use. There's also some information on how you can remove your turf and install a drought-tolerant garden. Finally, there's some classes on how you can go about and redesign that garden once you've started to remove that turf. Now, all those types of classes are, as I mentioned, virtual classes. They're free. Registration, though, is required. So please, please, if you're interested in one of these classes, there's more than just these 4. They're going to be taking place throughout the fall into the winter. Information is available at bewaterwise.com/classes. If we want to flip the slide, Justin. And so the second pillar of our Monrovia Conserves program is demonstrate. So the City of Monrovia has installed drought-tolerant landscaping and drip irrigation to both do our part to conserve water use and also provide examples of drought-tolerant landscaping to local residents. You know, a lot of folks immediately, when they think of drought-tolerant landscaping, they think of cacti. They think of maybe succulents. My wife, she loves succulents. She's got a nice little succulent garden in our backyard, and we really do love it. But there's other options as well. And so we try and use these opportunities to present some of those options. So if we want to flip the slide. Here we have some photos of the Monrovia City Hall demonstration garden. It's located along the corner of Ivy and Lemon Avenues. And one of the things that I love to highlight when we take a look at this garden, if you take a look at those pictures on the right, those are pictures of fruitless olive trees. As you all can imagine, with the wildlife we have here in Monrovia, fruited trees can sometimes be a problem. Fruitless olive trees, they provide a wonderful little bit of shade. They're pretty compact, and they provide a lovely scent, similar to what you get with fruited olive trees, without the mess and additional cleanup you'd require from a fruited olive tree. So it's really a great option. It's something that folks don't often think about. As you can imagine, with any kind of olive plant, it is perfect for the Mediterranean landscape and climate that we have here in Monrovia. If we want to, one thing to keep in mind with regards to that demonstration garden at City Hall, when we installed the drought-tolerant landscaping as well as the drip irrigation, we found that we were able to conserve water use for that landscape by over 51%. 51% reduction in our water use. It was quite significant. Here we have another demonstration garden along the median of Huntington Boulevard. That's between Mountain and Shamrock. So it's right next to the Wiener Schnitzel and the Aldi and Michael's. What we find is that for this landscape median, we were able to reduce water consumption again by about 50%. It was, I believe, 48% water use reduction from the combination of installing drought-tolerant landscaping and drip irrigation. It makes a huge difference. And you know, you've got some lovely shade trees in there as well as some native grasses. If we want to take a look at the next slide, we can find out about Celebrate, the third and final leg of our Monrovia Conserves program. And so we offer a quarterly sustainable landscape recognition award programs. As you can imagine, the goal is in part to promote water conservation. It also gives us the opportunity to celebrate the sustainable practices we're seeing throughout our community. Now, the winners of the quarterly program are featured in the various city publications and social media and digital media. So you get to be featured in our city manager's weekly update, on Monrovia To Date magazine, as well as the city website. In addition, as a nice little added bonus, your landscape, once approved, does receive you a $25 credit on your water bill. Now, as I mentioned, though, you do need to get approved for that landscape. Part of what we do like to see is that not only are you installing drought-tolerant landscaping that's sustainable, but you're also doing various things in order to ensure that we're getting that water, when we get rain, to percolate down into the soil. And so you're going to be hearing about that a lot as we go through the next set of slides. If we want to flip the slide, Justin. So here's some of the past participants. As you can see, folks are using a number of different types of plants. They're installing various ground cover to help the soil retain moisture. We've got various palms, some agave, various succulents and cacti, some lovely native grasses. And we really do enjoy being able to feature these various participants because all of them are available for folks to walk around, drive by, get some inspiration, and then see what they can do to beautify their own home landscape. If we want to flip the slide again. Now, one thing you might be wondering is what other tools are going to be available or are available right now? Well, we're very happy to inform you all today that the City of Monrovia recently received a number of water conservation kits. These are available to all residents by request. It includes a number of different tools from low flow shower heads and sink aerators to various leak detection devices, such as dye tablets, so you can drop it into your toilet and check and see if you have a toilet leak. We also have various replacement washers, so that way if and when you do find you have a leak, you can go and fix it, as well as some informational cards in terms of installation and water saving data. Now, we are currently working to get a online form so that way you can easily request a water conservation kit. We're expecting to have it available on the city's website, City of Monrovia. In the next few days. For right now, throughout the city has the chance. One slide.
Justin, are you there?
Yeah, it looks like we lost Chris for a second. He'll be logging back in.
Can everybody hear me?
Hey, Chris, it's a little laggy on your end. Can you hear us?
Apologize. Yeah, I can hear you. My sincere apologies. It looks like my internet connection is a little bit out of sorts. Do you have some tools to some additional tools to help you conserve if you want to flip the slide, Justin? So as Mr. Love mentioned, we have the Water Smart Home program coming up. We're so happy that Upper District is offering this program to qualifying residents within our disadvantaged community areas, as well as our low-income residents. We find this is going to be a great opportunity for folks to be able to get some free of charge water conservation items installed in their homes. To find out if you qualify, I'd strongly encourage you to go to ecotechservices.net/WSHP. Again, that's ecotechservices.net/WSHP. They have a number of different devices that they're offering. I particularly am excited about this water meter monitor, but I know that some folks would probably do well to take a look at the smart irrigation controllers, or perhaps the high efficiency sprinkler nozzles. They also have some indoor and outdoor leak repair kits. If you happen to know that you've got a leak or wonder if you've got a leak, that could be a great opportunity to take advantage of it. If we want to flip the slide. The city is also very proud that this autumn we're going to be teaming up with Metropolitan Water District to provide some incentives for both commercial and residential water savings projects. So we're looking at providing some irrigation controllers, rotating sprinkler nozzles, and multifamily residents can get a premium high efficiency toilet. So we're given that Metropolitan Water District provides services throughout Southern California. They're currently getting prepped to roll this out for communities across the Southland, including the City of Monrovia. They're preparing their application packets and information right now to premiere on their website very soon. We expect it to come out in the next couple of weeks. And I'd strongly encourage folks, if you're interested, to give us a call at the Public Works Department or to check out socalwatersmart.com. We're really looking forward to be able to provide these incentives for residents, so that way you can take on one of these water saving projects soon. You want to flip the slide? Also proud that we're going to be able to work with Upper District to provide a turf replacement program. So residents can apply for a turf replacement project. Now the minimum is 250 square feet of turf to be removed. If your entire yard is less than 250 square feet, would mean removing turf from the entire yard. It should be noted, these projects should include one or more components that are going to help any rainwater to percolate into the ground. That's really helpful, so that, as Mr. Love mentioned, we can capture as much rainwater as possible to get it into our main San Gabriel aquifer and be able to use it for drinking water at some point in the future. The program is expected to launch this fall. We're currently doing what we can to prepare for that program. Really excited at the opportunity to provide this turf replacement program, which we think is going to be really helpful for us to meet the demands of the drought that we're seeing. And if you want to take a look at the next slide. We also are really excited to offer our annual free compost and mulch program. Now, I'm sure a bunch of you are wondering, what does mulch and compost have to do with water conservation? Well, by using mulch, you can help reduce water consumption within that area of your garden by as much as 20%. In addition, use of mulch and compost is going to help to protect your plants from drought stress. So that way you can ensure that you're going to have a lush garden and lawn for years to come. It also is going to help to reduce soil erosion and provide additional nutrients to your plants. So everybody's winning. We're able to all see beautiful lawns and gardens, and also to meet our requirements for drought conservation. That program is going to be taking place Saturday, October 23rd from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. We are asking that folks RSVP. It helps us to ensure social distancing and make sure we have adequate supply for that compost and mulch. So you can RSVP by calling 626-932-5579 or emailing my coworker Jamie Bumia at City of Monrovia. And finally, if we have a number of different resources online. So obviously the City of Monrovia Water Conservation page, we're regularly going and updating it with new information with regards to the drought, with regards to various programs that we're offering. I mentioned it earlier, rebate information is available at socalwatersmart.com. Again, that's socalwatersmart.com for various rebate programs that are offered through MET, and this year through in partnership with the City of Monrovia. We've also got some great water-wise tips, various gardening video tutorials, and those classes I mentioned earlier at bewaterwise.com. Again, that's bewaterwise.com. So happy that we get to partner with Upper District and Mr. Love for the various water conservation programs that we're offering. That's information on that is available at upperdistrict.org/conservation-programs. And then if you're interested and curious about learning about California native plants, those are the plants that are typically going to thrive the best in our Mediterranean climate with our local wildlife and with the various other species of plants that you see throughout the community. I just strongly encourage that you take a look at our California native plant list on the Be Waterwise website. That's available at bewaterwise.com/California-native-plants. I'll take you right to a great list with a bunch of different types of plants that can maybe provide some inspiration for some upcoming gardening projects for everybody. Well, I really, again, just want to take a moment to stress that the City of Monrovia really needs your help in conserving water. We all feel probably the years of drought messaging that kind of causes us to get a little bit fatigued and tired. We've all been doing our part for the past decade, but it's so important that we continue to realize we're in a serious drought situation. We need to continue to conserve water. Everybody's been doing a great job. And if you have the chance to take on one of these projects in the coming months, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. By conserving water, you're not only saving money for your own household, you're also helping us to address the drought situation. One of the things that I really was thinking of as I was watching Mr. Love's presentation this morning is the way that we've been able to really within Southern California use our various reservoirs and dams systems to help store water. And by conserving water, you're ensuring that all that water stored is able to be used next year, the year after. The longer we're able to maintain some of that water storage, the better we're going to be able to weather this drought, because we don't know if it's going to be a 1-year drought or a 5-year drought. So we strongly encourage you to conserve. If you have any questions, please do feel free to contact us, reach out to us. If you want to flip to the next slide. Myself or my associate Jamie, our email addresses are up on this slide. In addition, please feel free to just call the Public Works Department. We'd be more than happy to get you any of the information I might have presented today. In addition, to get you in touch with any of the partners that we're working with, whether it's Metropolitan or Upper District, get you some information on some of those upcoming classes. Thank you so much for all the time that I've been able to take, and I'm really looking forward to everybody conserving water this coming fall and winter.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great presentation. Great information for what the city and Public Works is doing to help conserve water and give resources to the residents. Does anybody have any questions for Chris before we let him go? Feel free to unmute.
I do see one question in the chat. So there's a question in the chat. Is the turf removal program a grant or rebate-based program? Is it income-based? Great question, Rebecca. It is a rebate program. So you would have to, one, work with the city as well as Upper District to send in your application. There are some requirements that need to be met, as I may alluded to within the presentation. So you're going to need to make sure that it's the right size of a project, as well as that you're meeting certain of the other requirements. So that way we can make sure that we're installing the right kind of landscape that's going to allow, one, for it to be drought tolerant, and two, also for it to allow rainwater to percolate into our aquifer. So that way we're able to capture as much rainwater as possible and have as much drinking water as we can for years to come. So I would strongly encourage, if you're interested, Rebecca, if you reach out to us, we'll be able to give you some information by calling our Public Works Department or emailing me.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris, for all that information.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next, we'll get back to our presentation here, and our next one will be by myself. I'll be discussing a little bit about landscape maintenance before we move on to the San Gabriel Valley vector control. So just as a brief update to our residents about lawn maintenance and vegetation, it's not just grass, it's the bushes and the trees and so forth. And it ties in with all this discussion about water conservation, the drought. As you can see, sometimes with the summer months, the hotter weather, the lawns can either get brown, die, or even be left uncut. And now we have a concern with the fire season. So there's a lot of concerns with the maintenance of a property beyond just the discussion of water drought. So I wanted to make some recommendations that per our code, lawns cannot be above 6 inches in height. I know that Chris's presentation, he discussed that for a very healthy lawn, the grass should be maintained above 2 inches. So that 2 to 6 inch zone is really where the grass is the most beneficial, keeps it nice and clean, but they're also well nourished. So regular cutting of your lawn once a week, twice, or once every other week, but try to keep that lawn maintained especially if it's a little bit on the drier side, because we want to keep that looking good. It helps our community, our aesthetics, but it also is a safety concern as well. And then also with the bushes and trees and the lawn itself is making sure that it's cut away from the public right of way. We come across some bushes and vegetation that grows into the sidewalk. It makes it hard for folks with wheelchairs or strollers to be able to walk down the street. So just maintaining that in a clean way, cutting it back from the sidewalk so people can walk down and enjoy the sidewalk and also the street. And then if you're interested in conserving your water, the drought tolerant landscape is phenomenal. The drip systems, there's a lot of different methods out there. And I think those programs that Chris was sharing about some of the virtual webinars they have coming up to help discuss these topics would help benefit our residents. So check those out. Drought tolerant landscaping is great, saves you money. They look great. It's great for the environment. So just look into that. And if you have any questions about zoning and the design of that, you can talk to our planning division at community development. They can help guide you on the types of materials and how much of the property can be covered with a certain type. So it's got to have a balance between the vegetation and the materials, gravel, sand, and so forth. Here's just an example of drought tolerant. I know Chris showed some great ones that the city's done, but for your front lawn, your backyard, succulents, the drought tolerant bushes, these are all great for your property. So it looks great when you incorporate rocks and statues and so forth into it. It still looks great, but you save money for the water. I want to see if anybody has any questions regarding the landscape maintenance. Code enforcement with our city helps regulate that. We just want to make sure that our city is safe and clean and that the aesthetics are appealing. So with that, we help educate our residents on the proper maintenance of their lawns and bushes so that they're not overgrown, posing any type of fire hazard or creating any type of nuisance condition for the city. So that's on behalf of our code enforcement team. I just wanted to see if we have any questions before we move on to vector control. Okay, seeing none. If we can go ahead and move on to Levi's son, I believe is with us from San Gabriel Valley. Vector control. Okay, Levi.
Hey, Justin, thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I could hear you. And you're good to share.
Awesome. All right, let me go ahead and pop my slide up here. Well, now it's officially good afternoon, everyone. My name is Levi's son. I'm with the San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District, and just a big shout out to Monrovia. You guys have been absolutely awesome in being our public health champions, from supporting us in servicing your residents, but also in proclaiming Mosquito Awareness Week. To every now and then, I would see that our uninvited guest, Ada Ease, the giant mosquito, appear every now and then in your city council meeting. So it's a great way to raise awareness. But today, I'm here to just bring everything down to something really tiny, and that's the mosquito. Everything you've been hearing for the past couple hours, or past hour, regarding water absolutely applies to mosquitoes. So we're here to bring that world of water into how it can impact us around our home here. So let me go and get my presentation started here. And if you're not familiar with who we are, we're an independent special district. We not only serve Monrovia, but 25 other cities and parts of unincorporated LA County. That's about 2 million residents. We have a very long name, San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District, but we do something very simple, and that is to control and monitor and prevent any disease outbreaks because due to mosquitoes primarily. We do have the name Vector in our name because by definition, vector is any animal or insect that can carry a pathogen and spread it to people. The primary vector that we are tasked to control for is the mosquito. And no one I have known has ever advocated for or liked mosquitoes. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about these bloodsuckers, but also some of the things that we can do together on top of saving water, on top of using California native landscaping, but other solutions that can prevent these mosquitoes from taking over our neighborhoods. I'll also tackle some of the myths and misconceptions surrounding things that you may see in the store. For example, which repellent actually works, to do those bug zappers actually work. But first, why do we control mosquitoes? Well, they are considered the deadliest animal or creature on the planet. There is a whole week dedicated to sharks, Shark Week, but sharks only account for about 10 deaths every year. Mosquitoes, because when they bite, they can transmit a virus or a parasite. They can cause a lot more pain and suffering in the human population. That is not to say that every single bite that we get can result in some kind of sickness. It's just that because we get bit so often, the chances of being sick is increased. In the city of Monrovia, there are two different genera or groups of mosquitoes that you should be aware of. One is the one you actually probably grew up with around here, and they're called Culex mosquitoes. They're the ones that that tend to bite around dawn and mostly at dusk. And these are the ones that are primarily responsible for spreading West Nile virus. Currently, West Nile virus is pervasive throughout Southern California, including here in San Gabriel Valley. And to put it simply, West Nile virus is a bird disease. Now, with West Nile virus, it's supposed to always circulate between the bird and the mosquito, and then back to the bird again. Unfortunately, the way we have urbanized our environment, it has resulted in these mosquitoes biting people as well. So that's one thing you have to be aware of, is that every now and then, while these mosquitoes do bite, they sometimes will prefer the birds in the communities, which is why we ask people to report any dead birds they may find around Monrovia, is so that we, as a vector control agency, can see where West Nile virus is spreading. And of course, occasionally, hopefully rarely or never, people will get sick from the mosquito bites when they get West Nile virus. Now, there's another group that is of even more concern for people, and that is the Aedes mosquitoes, also popularly known as ankle biters. A lot more people actually know them better as Aedes mosquitoes due to the type of or group of mosquitoes they belong to, and they're very distinct. When they land on you, these are not your regular mosquitoes. These are small, black and white striped mosquitoes, and one of these mosquitoes can actually bite multiple times. So if you ever go out of your house to say get the mail or to just do a quick errand around the home outside, you're out there for maybe a minute. And next thing you know, you come back in, you have 4 or 5 bites around your calves and your ankles. All those bites could actually be a result of just one of these Aedes mosquitoes. And these mosquitoes are actually not native to where we are. They're considered invasive. So they primarily originate from places like Southeast Asia, parts of Europe, parts of Africa, and they have more recently entered our region here in Southern California back in 2011. And since then, they've been just leapfrogging over neighborhoods at a time and just kind of spreading around to different communities. And one big concern for us, that's not just the fact that they bite really aggressively during the daytime, is that they can also transmit different pathogens or diseases such as yellow fever, dengue fever, Zika, and something called chikungunya. Luckily, there have been no outbreaks reported at this time, and we're really crossing our fingers that we never get an outbreak of these diseases here in Monrovia or anywhere in Southern California. These mosquitoes are just like the Culex mosquitoes, the native ones here, and they require stagnant water. The Culex mosquitoes, the one that if you know them, you grew up with them around here, are the ones that can lay egg rafts. They're these small bunch of eggs that float on top of the water, and if you just tip out that stagnant water, poof, goodbye mosquitoes. However, the Aedes mosquitoes, the one that are invasive and bite aggressively, they lay their eggs individually on the sides of containers right above the water line. So if you get rid of the water, those eggs are actually still stuck there and they can stay viable for at least a year. That's a problem because for the longest time, we've been telling everyone, just get rid of the stagnant water. You're good to go. No more mosquitoes. But now we have these guys. These eggs are quite a problem for us because they are like little time capsules that can survive not only through the intense summer heat, but also through the winter. And that's actually one big reason why these Aedes mosquitoes have been spreading so fast and so quickly, or so fast and so pervasively throughout Monrovia and also throughout San Gabriel Valley. Now, these mosquitoes, Aedes and Culex, go through similar life cycles where they hatch out into the water, the stagnant water rather, and they go into the larva stage. They look like little tadpoles to some kids. I actually had a kid tell me they brought a bunch of these quote unquote tadpoles into their home and they disappeared one day. And I could only look at the parents and say, oh no, because they all started getting bites within a week. So they go through the larva stage, they go into this pupa stage, which is like little tumbling shrimp. And finally, within 7 days, they actually become adults that fly out of the water. Now, I mentioned 7 days because it is a common myth that people think that these mosquitoes grow out of the water in a month. But really, it is 7 days. It doesn't take very long for them to grow. So if you have that stagnant water sitting in a plant saucer you've been walking by for a couple weeks now thinking, I'll get to that later. Well, know that every week you're leaving that stagnant water behind is a couple hundred new mosquitoes emerging from there. So 7 days is key to remember that it takes that long for mosquitoes to go from egg to adult. Please do not let your swimming pool look like this because, for one, it's just a bad water quality issue. But two, a swimming pool that looks like this, that's filled to the brim with just green stagnant water, has no pump, no chlorine, that can produce up to 3 million mosquitoes in 1 month. That's a lot of biting to happen within a neighborhood. Luckily, with our agency, we do fly a plane over all San Gabriel Valley that does identify the pools that may look like this, and we make contact with the owner to help them resolve this issue. Our goal isn't so much to fix the pool, but to make sure the pool isn't being a mosquito factory. So we work with them to either put in, if depending on your city ordinance, mosquito fish if necessary, or find ways to pump that water out, get it moving, and provide them some guidance on how to make sure it doesn't become an issue. The mosquito life cycle is, and where they lay their eggs doesn't depend only on large swimming pools. Small sources of water, like bromeliads, to a capful of water, or even a small 5-gallon bucket of stagnant water, can attract mosquitoes. The bromeliads, which is the picture on the left there, was a huge issue during the Zika outbreak in 2015, 2016, especially in Florida. And in Florida, they had a lot of these bromeliads. And these are tropical plants. They are not native to Southern California here. But the way they grow is that they have these centered cups that can hold a lot of stagnant water. That water there is sometimes vital for the growth and development of the plant, but it is also, unfortunately, vital for the growth and development of mosquitoes, because the water just sits there all day for weeks on end if it's not flushed out regularly. We have come across many properties, not only in Monrovia, but throughout San Gabriel Valley, where people have planted large amounts of bromeliads, and they end up being mosquito factories because they don't know that the water can be an issue. So our recommendation is, if you have these bromeliads, if you really want to keep them, flush out that water once a week to interrupt that 7-day life cycle. That's going to be key. And ultimately, people sometimes ask then, well, if we're taking care of the water around our home, what is vector control doing about mosquito issues? And I can say this is not our response. I know for those of you who were familiar with this kind of activity, especially with spraying with DDT, that is no longer the case. I'm actually pretty happy about that myself, because this kind of spraying was pretty indiscriminate and had some definitely negative impacts on human health, especially when it was exposing people repeatedly over and over again to the same treatment. But we have a lot better technology now, and our pesticide use is much more heavily regulated to the point where we even ourselves do not want to use pesticides because it can produce some long-term negative effects that we don't want. So for us, any kind of pesticide use, especially towards the adult mosquitoes that are flying around, is considered a public health emergency. So anytime you hear that if any vector control district anywhere is looking to do any kind of spraying for mosquitoes, especially adult mosquitoes, that is generally a sign of a public health emergency. Because when you need to spray for these kind of mosquitoes that are flying around as adults, that means there's probably a high risk of disease circulation, or there's a chance of an outbreak occurring. So for our agency, we see adult mosquito control or area-wide treatments as a very last case resort because it is really a short-term solution. You're just knocking down the adults for that immediate response to an emergency. It doesn't take care of all the stagnant water sources that are in the area. And a lot of what we do now is not just running trucks and just spraying everywhere. We actually have a very data and science-driven control where we look at where things are probably high risk, and we apply a lot of education. So every single dot you see on that screen with an icon is some kind of education that was done in that rough area, whether it's a door-to-door campaign, a presentation, or working with community members, or even attending a community event. A lot of times when you see us working in the field, we're actually doing a lot of what you are doing, and that's eliminating the stagnant water sources and educating the residents about what to do to make sure this becomes a more long-term solution. Our goal is to come onto your property, help you out, and hopefully you never have to see us again. That's a good sign of having proper control of the mosquitoes around your property. We also do a lot of education in the field, so we do go out there with door-to-door door hangers if necessary for high-risk areas. We also have our community events that not only include this presentation that you're all a part of, but also out in the community with our giant inflatable mosquito booth. We call her Des Ease, obviously a play off of disease. Des is our 13-foot inflatable that goes out, and kids love it because they see it from far away thinking it's a bounce house, and they come running up and see that, oh, it's not, but we trap them into an educational experience where they learn all about mosquitoes. We also are in the classrooms. So if you are an educator or you know an educator, we actually go out and we make sure that our curriculum is NGSS aligned and it plays to all the core standards that the teacher wished for us to teach, and we apply that into the classroom. And we also have our citizen science projects that are definitely more popular now than ever before because more students are in the past year rather have been at home, so they're able to use our citizen science curriculum in the house rather than in the classroom. Some of the more common things you might see around the home with mosquito control is on the left-hand side, you see a picture of someone setting up a trap. So we do set up traps in Monrovia and also in every city across San Gabriel Valley. And that's for us to monitor and get a snapshot of where mosquitoes are, how much, and if they're carrying any diseases. And the person on the right here, you'll see is inspecting gutter and making sure that it's not filled with any mosquito larvae. If so, then we make a treatment if necessary. The treatments that we do for the water sources around your public areas tend to be, and primarily rather, a larvicide. So it's meant to target the larvae. So we use two main things. We either use oil, mineral oil, which many of you actually end up doing too, and that suffocates the mosquito larvae, or we use something called BTI, and you can find those in stores as well. They're really just soil bacteria that's naturally occurring in the environment, and organic farms use them too to control for any kind of mosquito larvae in the water. So one thing we always bring up around this time is myth or fact. Do mosquitoes disappear or die off in the winter? Unfortunately, mosquitoes do not disappear. If you're familiar with your underground storm drains, which are all the manhole covers perhaps, or some of the manhole covers, and some of the drainage that occurs around your streets, underneath all that is a system that is supposed to move the water out of your community. But mosquitoes love the underground storm drains because underneath the storm in that environment, it is a nice, consistent climate of being warm and a little bit humid, which means even while we're experiencing, say, 50-degree winters sometimes above ground, underground, it could be a nice warm 70 to 80 degrees. So some of these mosquitoes actually stay in the underground storm drains in the winter, which is why, and I've actually heard that from some folks in Monrovia, where sometimes during the winter, you get those warm days every now and then, and all of a sudden you see mosquitoes everywhere biting you up. Where are they coming from? Sometimes it could be from these underground storm drains. Luckily, though, we do have a team that go around and they monitor and treat for any of these mosquitoes in the underground storm drain systems. And because of the way we've urbanized, our mosquito season really isn't a season anymore. We're now a year-round operation. So even around Christmas time, New Year's, you may see our team working out there, popping open the lids and looking for a mosquito larvae in the ground. So that's one of our teams there. You can't miss them. It's a very bright, I guess you could say a very ugly, bright yellow truck that you'll see there. And our folks are there in the high visibility vest. I did mention BTI and mineral oil. Those are our two main ingredients that we use to control for mosquito larvae. And it's been very effective because it doesn't build up any resistance, or very unlikely to build resistance in the mosquito larvae. What you can do, one thing we hear a lot is, doing all this work, especially around stagnant water, can be a lot of work. It can be. I know you're all very busy. In fact, those of you who are tuning in, I'm sure you got 10,000 other things on your list you want to do or can do right now. But research has shown that if you just spend 10 minutes a week just walking around your home to look for stagnant water and dumping it out, it can actually reduce the amount of mosquitoes around your property dramatically. So even if you're taking out the trash on a specific day or just doing your weekly routine outdoors, build in some time to walk around your property and look for any stagnant water, even if something as small as a bottle cap. Another thing that we hear regarding what people do is we've heard people say, I'll use Vicks or similar creams to prevent mosquitoes. Sorry to break it to you, but Vicks does not, in fact, stop mosquitoes. What it might actually do is hide your chemical signature just for a little bit, because it is pretty overpowering when you smell it, and it could disorient the mosquito. But ultimately, mosquitoes can actually look for any part of your exposed skin and find where it doesn't have the Vicks or anywhere else that may be not protected from repellent and bite there. We've heard also that people have tried to pick up citronella candles or other area protection devices. I've seen those where they say if you download this app or you use some kind of device that could radiate something, it looks like sci-fi, where you have this force field around you and your family on a patio. Unfortunately, it is more of a myth than a fact, because the citronella candles and all these devices that are set up on your table can be very susceptible to the wind. So if there's a breeze coming through, then it's going to take that effectiveness just downwind completely. Unless you buy, I don't know, a dozen or two of these candles and create like a seance around you with them and light them all up, you might have some protection, but I wouldn't count on it either, because these Aedes mosquitoes that I talked about, the black and white ones that are aggressively biting, they like to bite below the waist. Now, the thing about these Aedes mosquitoes is that they have evolved with people. So they kind of know how we behave, which means they know never to fly around our faces. They know never to fly in front of us. So what they'll do is they'll tend to fly around our waist level or below. And usually if you're sitting at a table with the citronella candle on, the candle's not going to reach down there at your feet. One other thing, dryer sheets. I've heard people say, I'll rub dryer sheets on myself. You can. And unfortunately, it is not 100% protection, because the dryer sheet scent may eventually sweat off within a couple minutes. So as we move around, we sweat naturally. And as we sweat off the scent of the dryer sheet, mosquitoes will go, aha, I found you. But even if you were to keep repeatedly wiping the dryer sheet on yourself, you cannot stop one thing, and that is breathing. And whenever you breathe, you're giving out CO2, which is the pinpoint signature that mosquitoes go after. So even if you were to lather yourself in Vicks, dryer sheets, and whatever you want right now, mosquitoes can still find you from up to 30 to 50 feet away around your yard, just based off of the breathing of the CO2 you give off. But ultimately, the best repellent to use is one that contains any one of the active ingredient you see on your screen. So DEET is the gold standard, but I know a lot of people don't like DEET. In fact, I'm not a big fan of DEET, especially with the formulation that has come out in the past couple of years, but there are different options now that are available in stores. Oil of lemon eucalyptus, also known as PMD, has been rising very quickly in popularity. You can find them in stores. Oil of lemon eucalyptus is derived from the natural ingredients, but one thing to note is that it does have more toxicity due to the concentration, so do not use it with any children under the age of 3. And always check with your pediatrician regarding any kind of repellent or even sunscreen or anything applying topically to the child. Picaridin is also another popular ingredient, and so is IR3535. Now, usually the question comes up around here and say, well, what about those mineral oils I would get, like lavender? Lavender has been known to be used by a lot of people. And the one thing I can say to that is use what works, but be aware that these oils, these essential oils that you're using, are not vetted completely by, say, the FDA or any other major groups out there, especially the CDC. So you can use it, but one thing to be careful of, especially with lavender, is that synthetic lavender can actually attract mosquitoes. Natural lavender, yes, it can repel. And these essential oils, they do stay on your skin for a little while, but you do need to reapply them more frequently. So if you are using essential oils and it is working for you, great, but make sure you reapply frequently because they do sweat off very quickly. And as far as the synthetic fake lavender oil, how do you know if it's real? You have to be a chemist at the end of the day because there's no way to truly test for that immediately. And I would hate for you to use something like that and get bit right off the bat to find out. And of course, tip and toss weekly. Get rid of the water. That is very key, and you all should know that by now. Rain barrels. We're all big fans of water conservation around the home, but please make sure that your rain barrels do not look like what's on the screen, because each rain barrel can produce easily 500 to 1,000 mosquitoes in a week, and especially if there's no proper covering, no mesh. And also, one thing to note, that the area that's down here at the bottom of the barrels, between the spout and the bottom on the inside, can retain water quite frequently. So make sure you have a maintenance plan for your rain barrels. You got to tip it over upside down, flush it out, and use that water as soon as you get that rain event or if you fill it up with anything. One other thing here, dense vegetation. We've seen this in different properties around Monrovia, and residents have actually asked us too. You know, we have this ivy that's growing around the home. We hate it. Does it contribute to the mosquitoes? And yes, dense vegetation can actually attract mosquitoes. Now, that's not to say that dense vegetation creates and grow mosquitoes. It's that it provides safe harborage for mosquitoes. Now, mosquitoes are really terrible at regulating their body temperature. So the intense heat that we sometimes get in the summer and in the fall does impact the mosquitoes. So they like to seek refuge anywhere where it's cool and humid. And where do they go? In anyone's home that looks like Jurassic Park. If your home is densely vegetated with bushes and ivy and non-native plants that are just really, you're walking through a jungle, know that you're probably going to have a lot more mosquitoes staying there or around your home. So we say scale back the dense vegetation, dense that density of vegetation, and actually go for and eliminate any non-native plants too. Bromeliads are the #1 non-native plants that you see popping up on small and large properties. And we say go for California native plant landscaping. Here we go. Bring it all together now, back to the water conservation, because that is ultimately the key. When you're able to landscape mosquitoes out of your yard, you're solving not just any water conservation issues, but you're also being more bite-free. So your neighbors might see it and you're at your property, but you know you're actually not attracting the mosquitoes trying to seek refuge from the heat. So those mosquitoes are more likely to fly elsewhere to someone else's property that may have more dense vegetation or have the ivy on the property and so on. And a lot of great resources out there have already been mentioned, Be Water Wise, also the other California native plant organizations in San Gabriel Valley and in the state have lots of resources about what you can use to not only make sure you stay bite free, but fire escaping with California natives is important too. At the end of the day, everything you can do doesn't always solve every single problem, especially if you see a bad swimming pool or if you notice a source that has been sitting there for more than a week. So we say submit a tip to us, either on our website or calling that direct line you see on your screen, 626-814-9466, or at sgvmosquito.org. This actually, by going through our website and calling in directly, feeds directly into our system. And it then goes to someone who will triage that service request or the tip that you submit and send it out to the individual person who may be able to respond directly to it. Our response time is generally, well, you hear a response from us usually within 2 to 3 business days, and we can then come out depending on the situation. One other thing, this is a big challenge for Monrovia, and that is our Bite Back program. We have found through the years, and especially with talking to our friends on the East Coast, that these Aedes mosquitoes that are biting everyone up, they don't seem to be going anywhere. In fact, they seem to be getting worse and worse, depending on the neighborhood you're in. So I actually ended up calling one of our friends in mosquito control on the East Coast, and I said, what have you guys been doing? Because they've been dealing with these Aedes mosquitoes for decades. And they said the one thing they wish they had done early on was to have some kind of a grassroots approach to this problem, because they realized that these Aedes mosquitoes, they don't fly very far. They only fly as far as a block in radius, which means that if a community gets together, and if it's even just a block of residents, and they band together with mosquito control like us to find solutions to oust out any of the mosquitoes there, it can actually have a long-term effect and create more bite-free neighborhoods. So if you're interested as a community member, if you have frequent meetings with your neighbors, if you just want to rally your neighbors together and meet with us and have your neighbors learn what you learned today, sign up to be a Bite Back champion in our Bite Back program. You can go on the website there, or you can email us or call us, and we'll go ahead and get you set up. At this point, that does round out my presentation. Thanks for sticking around with me. I'll toss it over to Justin to moderate if there are any questions.
Hey, thank you. That was a great presentation by Mr. Sun. And I did see one question in the chat so far. Somebody asked, how do these invasive species of mosquito get to the US from other countries?
That's a great question. So in terms of mosquitoes here in the urban environment in the cities, 99% of these introductions of invasive mosquitoes is due to human trade and travel. In fact, with these invasive Aedes mosquitoes, the first time we found them was in 2001 in the ports of, it's either the port of LA or Long Beach, and they came in through Lucky Bamboo shipments. So the Lucky Bamboos were coming in from Southeast Asia. They were not held in gels. They're actually held in in containers that actually had some stagnant water or dried up stagnant water, and these eggs were stuck onto the container. So really, these Aedes mosquitoes have been introduced into our environment because we have done it to ourselves as people. Here at Mosquito Control, unfortunately, we have realized that a lot of what we do ends up biting ourselves back. So our goal is to take the effort now, learn more about what these invasive creatures are all about, and then bite back against these bloodsuckers.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Did anybody have any last questions for Mr. Sun? Okay. Well, thank you, sir. That was a phenomenal presentation. Thanks for joining us and educating us all on mosquitoes and vector. And I think we'll definitely be bringing your resources to future events and getting our residents on board to team up against this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get back to presentation. So the last thing we'll get you guys out of here. I just wanted to see if there's any announcements from the group that they'd like to share with our MAP leaders and residents. Just want to open up the floor for any announcements from the going on in the city. Anybody can unmute or type in the chat. Okay, I'll just start by saying, if you haven't seen on the radar, is in a couple weeks is our leadership academies that are kicking off. We have our youth and adult leadership academy starting the first week of September. So it's great to see a lot of registration so far and referrals. We've heard some great feedback from folks that have been referring friends and family. So if you haven't registered or you know somebody that would be great to go through our 8-week program, the Youth Leadership Academy starts on Wednesday, September 8th. And it's every Wednesday for 8 weeks through September and October for an hour and a half in the afternoons. And the adult one happens on Thursdays for 8 weeks from 7 to 9 p.m. And so if you haven't, go to our website, register, and get signed up. It's a great program. And we have over 350 MAP leaders in our city. So that number keeps growing, and it's because of the great work all of you do teaming up and sharing the information with each other. So if we don't have any other announcements, we'll go to our finale, which is our happy birthday for June, July, and August. So the last 3 months, we've had a lot of birthdays. So happy birthday to everybody on this list. And hopefully we'll see you at the next MAP-edu for that. And then I'll just conclude by doing a quick raffle to celebrate all the people that are here. So for all of our attendees, I was able to write everybody's name down and get their names in here so I could do a quick raffle so that's fair. And the first one that we're having is going to be for a Wendy's gift card. And that person is Khalil. I see you right there. So if you want to come by our office at Community Development anytime next week, Monday through Thursday, this will be set aside for you to pick up, okay? Congratulations and thanks for being here. And then our next one is Paul Ramirez. Are you with us, Paul?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Paul, so you got a Starbucks gift card here. So if you'd like to swing by our community development office, you can ask for me, Justin, anytime next week, and I can hand that to you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And then the last one we have is Gina Mills here.
Oh.
Yes, I am. Yay!
Hey, Gina. Hey, so we have a Wendy's card here for you if you'd like to swing by. I'll have that for you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. And I just wanted to let everybody know from our chat, we had some announcements. The Monrovia Historical Museum is looking for new volunteers. So if anybody wants to find out more about that, check out the Monrovia Historical Museum. Sarah is on our chat. You can reach out to her as well. And then lastly, from Tina at our Community Services Department, Canyon Park will be open Monday, August 30th, right around the corner. This will be by reservation only. So that opens Monday, August 23rd. You can call the community center if you have any questions. So starting this coming Monday, you can start to make reservations to go to Canyon Park. That's some great news. So share that with your neighbors. Make those reservations by reaching out to community center. So with that, thank you, everybody. I held you almost to the full time, but great information from all of our speakers, from the Water District to Public Works and Vector Control. We have a great lineup and great information. So hopefully you had all their contact information. If you might have missed it, feel free to reach out to me or our MAP team, and we can get you their contact info if you had any follow-up questions. But thank you for attending. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you at the next MAP event. And don't forget, the Leadership Academies are just a few weeks away. So with that, I'll say farewell and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.